All right, now we're going to dive into talking about event and program planning. This is our third module for our club orientation for fall 2020. I'm Jen Haugen.
And I'm Nick Dressler.
Woo. So, as you all know, hosting a successful club event on campus requires a lot of planning, and Campus Life is here to help. Especially this year, some events are going to require a lot of planning and time that might go into it to make sure that we are adhering to the guidelines that we mentioned in Module 2. So before you dive into your planning process, make sure you go back and review that module about all of the COVID-19 policies and guidelines for this year. And all of these things must be followed for all of your events and programs. So just make sure that you're adhering to these as you plan your event.
And it's important for us to note that, we're here too. We know that all of this can feel very overwhelming, anxiety-inducing, stress-inducing, and we're going to do our best to help you strategize about how to program amidst the pandemic and navigating all the COVID-19 guidelines. So please, as much as possible, don't feel that you are alone. Please feel free to reach out to us at any point in your event or program planning process, and we're happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be diving into an overview of the planning process for an event. And like Nick said, if you need extra support, please reach out to us in Campus Life because we're happy to help you. And this is a very high-level program planning guide that we're going to be going through. So, of course, your event might look a little bit different or have other details to attend to. And again, we're here to help with that. So please note that some of this information may change. Nick and I are recording this in August, and things are going to evolve as we go throughout the year. So be sure to keep referencing the COVID-19 guidelines on the Student Club's website for the most up-to-date information regarding planning your event.
All right. So we have the next few, they're steps. We have the next few slides as steps. And things to consider as you go through an event and program planning process. And just to start, let's talk a little bit about timeline. There is a lot that can go into planning events. You really should consider the logistical and just like human brain power, I don't know if we have a lot of really physically strenuous events and programs, but also that as well. And we really strongly recommend at least 2 weeks for planning time. And, if you actually visit our event and program planning guide on the Student Club's website, you'll see that all of them start at the very top with 4 to 6 weeks of planning. We really think that that's the sweet spot because there's a lot that goes into event planning and even probably some things that you're not considering, such as how long will it take for supplies you need for the event to arrive, especially in these times. A variety of shipping options are delayed these days. So planning extra time for shipping the materials to campus is important. What paperwork needs to be completed. Nowadays we're very internet-based with most things. But things like funding applications, submitting things to EMS, which we're going to talk about in a second, a variety of details related to your event are going to need to be figured out, such as, Jen?
Like space. We're going to talk about space in a minute. Setup, who's going to be involved in the event, attendees, a lot of details that are going to be really important for you to narrow down that could take some time to really figure out as a group.
Yep. And finally, we talked a little bit about it just now, but also funding to be acquired. So if you don't have enough money in your club account, how are you going to get funding to help support your event and make it the best it can possibly be? And we're going to talk about that in a later module as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next step to consider as you start planning is goal setting and member responsibilities. So Goal setting is really important because we want to make sure that what you're envisioning for your event is what comes to fruition. So make sure that you have a clear understanding of what you want your event to look like when you start planning. Some things to consider here with that is, what are the learning outcomes? What do you want your attendees to walk away from after they leave your event? And what will that experience be like for them? And does it align with your club mission? So what's the mission or purpose of your club? Does your event fit in with this mission? And then the second part here with member responsibilities is, how are you going to divide up the planning amongst your club members and club leaders? And what are other club member responsibilities for the event? Something that we want to encourage as much as possible is delegating.
Yes.
Delegating is an excellent way to give your younger members or less experienced club members some responsibility with planning the event and getting them involved in what it means to be a club leader. And this could lead to inspiring them to pursue a leadership position in the future, which is really important for retention for your club.
Absolutely. It's also important to consider when you're thinking about goal setting and learning outcomes, what the experience will be like for your attendees. And especially in the times which we find ourselves, what will an in-person experience feel like based on what you want for your event, versus what would a virtual experience feel like? Next, we're going to talk a little bit about funding. As I said earlier, we have a whole module about funding because we want you to be as knowledgeable as possible about how the club funding system works. But when it comes to event and program planning, it's important for you to consider all of the costs of your event, and assess your club account and determine if you need to apply for more funding. To assess your club account, something to know is that club treasurers and presidents will get a report from accounting once a month detailing all of the transactions that have happened in your account to date for the academic year. Now, that report isn't always going to be the most accurate because depending on if credit cards were used or the form of payment, reimbursement, it might not be totally up to date. So you should make sure that you keep as close tabs as possible on your club's expenditures using your club ledger. And also, if you need sort of a snapshot in time besides that accounting report, you can always reach out to me or Jen, and we can look up how much at least Banner has on your account. But again, that might not be totally up to date depending on different transactions that are in process. So in terms of like looking at all the costs of your event, you have obvious costs like event supplies, decorations, prizes. If you have a speaker or a performer, obviously this year visitors, or at least for the first semester, visitors aren't going to be allowed on campus, but you can still book virtual speakers and performers for your club. Those are obvious, but there are also hidden costs involved. Like, for example, did you know, Jen, did you know that you have to purchase the rights to screen movies?
Nick, I have Netflix.
Even if you have Netflix. Actually, streaming services, Jen, like Netflix, Hulu, I don't know if anyone has Apple TV Plus. Do you have Apple TV Plus, Jen?
No.
Yeah, I don't have it. But those kinds of streaming services, most of the time, the things on them are actually not permitted to be shown in a public setting without purchasing a screening license. And actually, you can't, even with that screening license, play them through the streaming service. You need a physical copy, and this is due to copyright law. And we can talk more about that if you get in touch with us. But that's something you need to take into account. If you want to do a movie screening, you need to purchase movie rights. Also, all speakers and performers, if they come to campus, so at least for now, this isn't going to be a consideration, but if they come to campus, they'll need to have a certificate of insurance. And if they don't have one, many small local ones, especially in Maine, don't carry a certificate of insurance that protects both them and the college from loss or liability related to their engagement. The club might have to cover those costs. So just things to keep in mind. And also, just make sure you have enough time to apply for funding if you need it through the application for additional club funding. This is why we really recommend that 4 to 6 week window, because typically, like from the time that a club submits their additional funding requests to the Budgets and Clubs Board, and the time they hear back, that could be a week and a half to 2 week window. There are also a variety of funding sources available to you through Campus Life that you can apply for, and we're going to talk about those in the funding module as well. I know that this slide feels like it's a big tease for the funding module, and you would be right about that. So please be sure to check that out if that's relevant to your position in the club, because there's going to be a lot of great information there for you.
Okay, so now that we have gone through the first 3 steps of determining your timeline, figuring out who's doing what, and acquiring funding, we can move into reserving a space. So the first thing that goes into this will be determining if your event will be in person or virtual. My gut is telling me that the majority of our events, programs, and meetings for at least this semester will be virtual, and that is due to the extreme space restrictions this year on campus. As you might be aware, the majority of normally not classroom spaces this year are being turned into academic spaces. So that leaves us with a very limited amount of space for programming.
Sorry to interrupt,
Nope,
Jen,
you're okay.
but we anticipate that there will likely be more availability towards weekends in terms of indoor space than during the week, based on a variety of factors. The capacity to turn around a space from like a weeknight to a weekday morning is going to be more difficult than it will be to, for example, have a Friday night event and turn it around for a Monday morning class. So
Right.
That is part of just to help you understand what the landscape is.
Yeah, great point. So that being said, if you are really looking to have an in-person meeting or event with your club, or to host an event for the campus, there are a few options for you for in-person locations. We have 280 Underground and the Little Room. Those are the 2 programming spaces on campus that will be strictly for programming, which will be really great. But that is only 2 spaces, so again, it will be very limited. And I do want to mention, too, as weather allows, we can use outdoor spaces.
Absolutely.
So we should utilize that as much as we can because they're much more available than the indoor space.
Yeah, and when you're thinking about this question in particular, in addition to the COVID-19 guidelines and the possible obstacles that you might have to overcome to doing an in-person event and how that might impact sort of your vision for the event, you should also think through whether your attendees will be comfortable attending in person. Folks may have come back to campus, but they might not be entirely comfortable with gathering with I won't even say large groups of people, just groups of people generally. So that's a factor. And also consider that if you plan for an in-person event, there is an inherent exclusion of students who are still studying at the college but remotely. And so depending on what you want for the vision of your event, if you want to be the absolutely most accessible to as many students as possible, virtual would likely be the way to go.
Absolutely. And there are multiple ways that we can help you go about this to make sure that you're being as accessible as possible to all of your club members. This could even look like doing a hybrid of in-person and virtual to be able to reach that audience. So great point. So we're going to talk about this in just a second, but we're going to need to make sure that the space is reserved where your event will take place. And this will also include providing setup needs if it's in person, and determining the maximum capacity of attendees that can fit in that space, which we talked about in a previous module. That is going to look a lot different than what it normally looks like. So if the event will be in a virtual or hybrid format, you just need to make sure that you have the necessary technology needs met prior to your event.
And I would say that besides like the basic needs, what this also looks like is making sure you test everything out with maybe a few club members in the week leading up to the event, because it would be terrible if you sort of got to the event date and time and there was some unforeseen complication, like you got into the room. We actually were on a meeting earlier today where one of our colleagues, their mic just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so the more you can do to test things in advance, the more you can have sort of control over things that are otherwise uncontrollable and unforeseen circumstances that could arise from using technology.
And this also goes with, too, like just familiarizing yourself with how to use things.
Absolutely.
Like sometimes different platforms use different language or different, tools. So just making sure that you familiarize yourself with these things as much as possible before diving in. So now we're going to go into actually how to reserve a space. And the system that the campus uses is the Event Management System, or EMS for short, and that's just events.bates.edu. Before I actually show you how to reserve the space, I'm just going to mention a couple of details. It is recommended, and I believe you have to reserve the space at least 3 business days in advance of the event date. The system will not actually let you reserve it any sooner than that. You'll get an error message when you try to do that. So just make sure you have it reserved as soon as you know the date and time and location that you want to have your event. And the capacity, like I said before, is listed for each space on EMS. And this year, the spaces are very limited. So again, I just want to reiterate that as much as possible.
One thing to mention with regards to capacity, in the previous module, we showed you how to look up the capacity. We'll cover that again in brief momentarily. But we just want to, at the risk of repeating ourselves multiple times, that even if there's a capacity listed in EMS, it's likely that your actual capacity may differ based on your event layout and what kinds of furniture you have in the space. The more tables there are in the space, the more chairs, etc., the lower your capacity is going to go. But you might also want those things to help support, for example, crafting nights, or just to have like a space for your attendees to just sit down and chill. And we can talk through those considerations together, but you shouldn't necessarily consider the capacity listed in EMS as like the be-all, end-all of how many people it's possible to have in your event at one time. But that's where, for example, concurrent iterations of your event in different spaces on campus, or even consecutive sessions of your event where maybe there's time taken in between to do cleaning and disinfection, could come into play to help as many people as possible engage with your in-person event.
Okay, so now we're going to show you how to reserve a space on campus using the Bates EMS, or Events Management System. What you're going to do first in your web browser is go to events.bates.edu, which I've already done, and then it'll bring you to this sign-in page where you will put in your Bates credentials, like I have done here, and then we'll click Sign In. When you get to this page here, this is your home page. It'll show you any events that you've already had reserved, I believe, here.
Yes, under your bookings.
Under your bookings, which will be down here. So obviously I don't have anything yet. And then this is what will show up on your page is request allows setup, publicity, or art display. So you're going to go over here and click book now. And then this is the page where you will create your request. So if you know the date and time, you will put it in here, and then you'll be able to search by space. So I'm going to do Mean Girls Appreciation Day, which will happen on October 3rd, which is a Saturday. That's lovely.
Oh, that's perfect.
I know. So Saturday, October 3rd, will be Mean Girls Appreciation event. We're going to watch Mean Girls together. We'll have it start at 8 o'clock. And I don't know how long the movie is. Let's say it's 2 hours long. So we'll have it go from 8 to 10. And then we're going to click search. So I have search for all locations right now. But I can add or remove depending on if I already have a space in mind. So let's say I really want to do it in the little room. I can search up here. Maybe I have to search Chase Hall, actually.
Yes.
I search
so that's a
Chase
great
Hall.
point, Jen.
That's why we're showing you this.
So that's a great point. Notice at the top it says building. So you do need to search by building. That buildings moniker is a little misleading because most outdoor spaces on campus can also be booked through here. And you would just search, usually it's sort of a quote unquote building in the system that only has one room, right? So
Good point.
if you want it to be the amphitheater by the puddle, you would search for the amphitheater. If you want it to be the library quad, you'd search for that, and they'll pop up on the list there.
Excellent.
Something that's a little bit counterintuitive is the library arcade is found under Ladd Library. So just a good
So it's
point.
specific to Ladd Library.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah. So this can be a little bit tricky, as you know. So just pay attention
And
to where you're typing in.
If for some reason you can't find the building or the space you specifically want to reserve in, contact us, because chances are it's just has a funky name in the system, or there might be, it might not be reservable for a reason, and we can help get to the bottom of it for you.
Absolutely. Okay, so I know I want to do Mean Girls Appreciation in Chase Hall. So I'm clicking on Chase Hall here and update locations. So it'll only show me Chase Hall down here. So I believe we've shown you this already, but this CAP here is capacity of the room. So these,
those are the
I believe,
updated-
have been
yep.
updated. Yes. So they've been updated now based on the new COVID guidelines by the college. Our
Except for the
friends,
little room.
except for the little room. Okay, well that's not helpful.
The
But
one
you'll
place
see
we're
here,
reserving.
you'll see here, Memorial Commons now says capacity is only 50 people, and before I believe it was like 640,
695, I think.
Yes, so much different, obviously. But our friends in facilities worked really hard to figure that out, so that's really awesome. So for Mean Girls Appreciation, let's say I want to do it in the little room. Please note, this is not the correct capacity of the little room.
The little room will likely be around 10.
Yes, it'll be quite small. It's going to be a small get-together. So you click on this green check here on the left to kind of add it to your cart, if you will. And this is attendance and setup. So you need to select the number of attendees and desired setup for this room. So I'm going to say that only 10 of my friends are coming.
And to clarify, it will not let you insert more attendees than is the capacity.
Correct. Yes. So here you'll see selected rooms, and it says the little room for my date and time. So then I will go to next step up here on the right to...
And I would say, so just to highlight why that space exists, you can continue searching and adding rooms to this reservation as much as you want.
Yeah, so say I want to have it happening concurrently. So we're going to watch it in the little room, but say we also want to watch it in Skelton. I can also click this check button here to add Skelton to the event. But you'll see the capacity is only for 8, so it won't let me reserve it if I have more than 8 people. So I'm going to put 8 people there and add room. So now for my Mean Girls Appreciation event on October 3rd, I have Little Room and Skelton as my event locations.
This is a little bit complicated, but something to know is that if you are going to have your event appear on the Bates Today calendar and in Bates Engage, they only, so what Jen's showing you under selected rooms, they only put listings on the Bates Today calendar and Bates Engage by room, not by sort of like the bigger reservation. So you would see
2 of these.
you would see Little Room and Skelton Lounge pop up as events on the calendar and on Bates Engage. If you want to get around that, what we suggest, like for something like this, you probably do want people to know that it's existing in both spaces. But if you want sort of a single space for people to arrive at, what you're going to want to do is submit 2 separate reservations. One that you select, and Jen will show you the flag. One that you select that Bates Today is included, and the other one that you say, no, I don't want this included in Bates Today.
Yes, that's really important. So this can be a little bit confusing, we know. So please come talk to us if you're really unsure of what to do. So I guess for the interest of clarity here, let's only have the event in the little room. So I changed my mind. I don't want Skelton. And we can click this red button and it will remove it from my reservation. So right now we just have the little room for October 3rd from 8 to 10. Now we'll go to next step, and this is where we will do any setup details that are needed. So it brings us to this page, and it's going to show us some chairs, tables, staging, cleaning, trash, recycling, all that good stuff. I am not quite sure what my setup is going to be for this event. Say I want just one table to have my decorations on because I'm going to make it pink everywhere. I'm going to have this I'm going to click on this for a rectangular table here. And I only want one table. And for special instructions, Nick, is this where I put where I want the table located?
Yes.
Excellent. So special instructions here, say I want the table to be on the back wall where the dance lighting is in the little room. So I'm going to say, please place against the back wall near dance lighting. And that is where they will place it.
It's important to be as specific as possible with this request so that our friends and facilities understand exactly where you want something to go. For an event setup in the little room, if it's not set up quite the way you want it, not the biggest deal, you can always go in, and I recommend that you go in a little bit before your event to make sure everything's set up correctly so that you can alter it.
Yes, absolutely.
In bigger spaces, obviously, it becomes more of a problem if you walk into a room. Not that we're going to have this situation this fall, but if you walk into a room that's supposed to be set up for 100 and there's only 10 chairs,
That's a problem.
that's obviously a problem.
Yes.
So you're going to want to make sure you're as specific as possible as to how you want this laid out. And we're going to go over with you when we get in touch with you to talk through this your reservation, exactly how you want things laid out. So don't feel if you're not quite sure about how you want things laid out when you're submitting your event reservation, don't feel you need to have all the details firmly locked down because we can go back on our end and edit these things for you.
Yes. So I'm not going to have chairs because, one, I don't want it to affect my capacity for the space.
Yep.
And two, it's going to be a PJ party. So people are going to come in their PJs and blankets and they'll be able to sit on the floor nice and comfy like that.
Socially distanced, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Socially distanced. Yes. Everyone will have their 6-foot area
Great.
that they need to stay in. With masks on, of course. Pink ones, please. And then now we will click next step. And this is where we put in all the details. And I like to also think of this last step as like the beginning of your marketing plan. So the event name is going to be important because that is what's going to get broadcasted across all of wherever this is linked to. So like Nick said, Bates Today and Bates Engage will be linked to this. So I said Mean Girls Appreciation Party. Cool. Event type. So this is just how you will categorize your event. Mine is a film/movie screening. And my group. So this is going to be hosted by Film Board. Sure. We're going to pretend I'm in Film Board.
Hey, Jen, why don't you show them how to search for a group in case they've never done this before and it's not listed?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So this is the little search button here. In case your group, for some reason, is not automatically popped up right here, you can click this search function and try to search for your group. So let's say who wants to host this event?
Sunshine Society.
Ooh, love that. Sunshine Society. So I typed in Sunshine Society popped up.
And your club has a reserving group in EMS on this list.
Yes.
If you can't find it, it's likely that the way you're referring to your club isn't how EMS knows to refer to your club.
Try typing Bates first. I feel like a lot of clubs
have Bates first. We've been working on that. Yeah, there's a lot. We've been working on that to only have clubs that are external facing to have Bates in their name because all clubs are Bates clubs.
Correct.
And it helps better with alphabetization if Bates isn't in front of every name. If for some reason your club doesn't appear here, be sure to get in touch with Campus Life and we'll get to the bottom of it.
Great. So now I'm going to click close. And now Sunshine Society is showing up in my group details. Okay, so now that we have our club name listed here, I searched for Sunshine Society. We can see here now the event contact just says Sunshine Society. That's not entirely helpful for us in case we need to get in touch with the club to figure out if there's anything we need to change with your setup or description or questions about, COVID guidelines, whatever that is. You need to change this to a temporary contact.
Always.
Always. So this is we don't want to try to hunt down through your club who could have been the program planner for this event, or who put in the request, or who is the best to contact. So please make sure that the event contact name goes here.
And I think that's a great point, Jen. Sometimes clubs will assign different roles to different people when it comes to event and program planning. The person who you put in here, even if it's not you, the person filling out the EMS form, should be the person that you want us to follow up with regarding your event.
Yes.
If that's someone else, put someone else's name in.
That's a great point. We've definitely had people who did the reservation and then we follow up with them and they have no idea what's happening with the planning process, which is okay, but that just means we needed to know who the actual program planner was prior to that. So that's where you'll enter that information in. Very important.
We probably don't need their fax number. What do you think, Jen?
Does anyone even know what a fax is anymore? I don't know.
I'm sure our students know what faxes are, but I don't think any of them have one.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So then this next part is additional information, and this also too is really important for marketing. So this is what Nick was referencing earlier. Would you like this event included in Bates Today on the Quad website and in the Bates Engage app? So I want yes, because I want everyone to see this event in the Bates community. I want everyone to know about it and to come. But if this is my secondary location that I don't want people coming to, this is where I would click no, and it will not be included on any of these marketing surfaces. What am I saying? Surfaces, marketing tools. So I'm going to click
it's
yes.
late on a Friday as we're recording this,
honestly. My
and
brain
our brains are kind of mush, so please bear with us.
I'm sure you can all relate. This summer was something.
Was it a summer?
It was.
We don't need to go down existential regrets, but...
Oh, great. Okay, so next, is your event open to the public outside of Bates? This year, the answer will always be no, or at least this semester. This event is not open to the general public. And then this is the event description. So this is the fun part. You get to tell people what you're doing. So join Sunshine Society as we honor Mean Girls. I feel like that's so counterintuitive for Sunshine Society. Sorry. Mean Girls Appreciation Day.
People can get joy out of Mean Girls.
I get joy out of Mean Girls. I love that movie.
Like, not Mean Girls the people, but Mean Girls the movie.
You're right.
People can get joy out of that. Mean Girls are just mean otherwise.
Show up wearing your comfiest pink PJs and bring a blanket to get comfy on the floor. Just say to sit on the floor. So you can edit this. You can go back and edit this description anytime through EMS. So when you sign back in, you'll be able to see your reservation and you can edit that, which we can maybe show you how to do that after. And this part down here, does your event contain an art display? So these are just some little details that, setup might need to know just in case. So would you like your event videotaped or audio recorded? I don't need that because it's just a video screening. Is catering required? I believe we will be talking about catering in a moment here, but it is not required because it does not exist this year. Will we be serving alcohol? No, this will be a chem-free event. And now this part's important. Indicate the amount of setup/teardown time you will need. So it's important, like Nick mentioned, to go into the space and make sure that your setup is good before the event starts. But I mentioned before, too, that I'm going to want some pink decorations in the little room to celebrate Mean Girls Appreciation. And it's going to take me about an hour to set it up and an hour to break it down. So we're going to do this here to make sure that the space is reserved to give me enough time to do those setups. And then here it's going to ask for the actual setup time. Just some details that they need to know.
Actual start time, it says, actually, Jen.
Actual event start time, yes.
Not the setup time.
Oh, yep. Sorry. Thank you. And then this is the actual end time. My goodness. So many options. 10 o'clock. And then do you have any setup needs? So I mentioned it before that I do need that table set up in the back. So I'm going to say I will need them in services or setup notes, or I will add them in services or setup notes. So I will just reiterate again where I want my table. But if you don't have a setup, if you just need the space as it is, empty room or whatever, you can click none needed. Or if you're not quite sure, you can click need help, please advise, and we will get in touch with you. So.
And it's always good to just reiterate. Like, it doesn't hurt to retype something similar to what was already put in the equipment/services section, because it just helps facility services understand exactly what's required of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, of course, you will click down here that you've read and agreed to the terms and conditions. If you are so interested, you can actually click them and read them if you want. And then you will click Create Reservation on the right. Now, this is kind of cool. When you're done, say I made a mistake and want to add something to my description or something, you can actually go in and edit it right away. Or if I decide I actually want a couple chairs in the space or I need another table, you can go through here and edit the reservation. If I go back to my home screen, here it's saying
because it's too far out.
Yeah, there are no bookings yet because we're too far out. But I'm going to fast forward through this here. Go to October 3rd, and this is my booking with my title where I have it reserved, and it says it's pending approval. So what happens after you submit this is your reservation will go to the EMS system on Nick's end, and Nick will then review the event. I will, assist with that, or the student programming advisors will review the event, and then we'll approve it based on those details.
And it's important to note that based on what Jen just said, your submission of this form does not guarantee you that space. Your space isn't confirmed until you've received an approval email. So just be aware of that. We've seen sometimes clubs will be really proactive and start marketing something before the space is even confirmed. And unfortunately, sometimes like the space isn't even available. Even if it did look like it was, there are things that pop up that were unforeseen, and the space it ends up isn't available, and then the marketing has to be all changed. It's not great.
Yes, it can cause some problems. So
make sure
it's approved.
Something that I will note, and this isn't like a hard and fast rule necessarily, rather than a suggestion in terms of sort of logistical ease. So you should only really edit your reservation before it's approved. If you go in and edit your reservation after it's approved, it restarts the whole process. Yeah. And it also tends to confuse facilities in terms of like what the actual guidance is on the event. So our recommendation is that if you do have to change significant portions of your event, if it's like, but let me back up. If it's just like a description that needs to be changed, or like, maybe you need to change the layout, for example, work with us to do that. Don't go into EMS and change those things. If it's like literally the day that needs to be changed, I would recommend that you cancel the event first and submit a new reservation. So anything that's more like logistical related, get in touch with us. If it's anything that's like more date, location, time related, cancel and rebook. Yes. Because it just makes things a lot easier on our end in terms of like navigating through all of the requirements for a specific event.
Yes. So we said this before, but just to reiterate, this is the tool that you will use to reserve all on-campus, in-person event spaces, as well as outdoor spaces. So that's something important, I think, to mention, especially for this semester, while weather allows. Please reserve the spaces for outdoor events. You might think that just because it's outside, anyone can really access it, but because space for in-person events are so limited this year, we are really going to need us all to be using EMS to reserve those spaces to make sure that folks can use the space on campus fairly.
Hey, Jen.
Yes, Nick?
So now let's talk about accessibility and inclusion.
Yes, so important.
It is important to make sure that your event, regardless of whether it's in person or virtual, is accessible to all students. Mm-hmm. So you can find most of these in the event and program planning guide on the Student Club's website. I think it might even be called the accessibility guide there. And these are just things to consider as you plan your event to make sure that your event is as accessible and welcoming as possible to all of our community members and potential attendees. So the first question is, obviously this is for an in-person event, is this building or space accessible for folks who, for example, may have difficulty using stairs or who may use a wheelchair? And if it is accessible, is it equitable? So, for example, can all attendees use the same entrance and access a restroom regardless of ability or gender identity? Stairs, narrow doorways and hallways, and a lack of accessible and/or all-gender bathrooms are often barriers to access and may actually turn people off from wanting to come to your event if you're hosting it in a space that doesn't have this. I will say, and I will vocalize, Chase Hall is really difficult for us in that way.
Oh, yes.
It's if you've ever been in that space, it's literally 5 different like floors across 3 stories. It is a building that was built in multiple different ways, and so if you are having an event in Chase Hall, it's important for you to take a look at these and really consider whether your event can be accessed by as many people as possible.
Yes.
Is the space equipped with technology to amplify the voices of speakers and performers? Jen and I have been in settings where people haven't been able to hear because someone decides to issue using a microphone that's actually even available in the space. And they say, oh, like I can just use my voice is loud. That really ignores people who might have hearing impairments. And also, it doesn't take into account how awkward it can be when someone asks, is this okay, about my voice just projecting into the room. In a room with a bunch of people in it, you don't want to be the one person who sort of raises objections to the way it's formatted. So don't put your attendees in that position. Make sure there's technology to amplify the voices of the speakers and performers in the room. Another key question is it pre-recorded or live and then live and recorded and posted later? What tools are you using to be interactive? A great platform that Jen and I have seen used in a bunch of different sessions are collaborative documents like Google Docs or even Padlet that allows for quick pop-ins. Certain conferencing platforms also enable polling. Try to engage your attendees as much as possible, especially if you're doing things virtual. Also, consider in a virtual setting how you will caption the speech of speakers and performers. So Zoom, to our knowledge at this juncture, at the time we're recording this, no longer offers free captioning. So if it's determined that Zoom is the best platform for your event or program, you should work with us to book a live captioner. That's actually a profession, and I'm sure it's booming right now with so much video conferencing happening. Google Hangouts is a great platform too because it has satisfactory, I won't say it's perfect, but satisfactory auto captions built in. So that's a way to get around having to pay for a live captioner. This also brings up a great point in my mind about making sure that if you have a presentation or a movie screening, to ensure that text is legible on your presentation slides, that from anywhere in the space, if you're in person, that anywhere in the room, folks can read what's on the slides. And also that if you have a video presentation, that captioning is available. And you would be surprised. There are some, older DVDs out there that don't have closed captioning as an option. Verify that closed captioning is available and make sure it's turned on. No questions asked for attendees at your screening, just in case they need it.
Yeah, and something that I want to just highlight about Google Hangouts is it is probably going to be your best bet for a virtual meeting or event if you're going to be using like a video conference tool. The one reason, that Nick just mentioned about the captioning, we have used the captioning for a couple of meetings now that we've had with student leaders over the summer, and it has been so helpful just in terms of accessibility, but also just to be able to understand what folks are saying. If there's like any technology issue or things like that with a microphone, you can read the captions. It's also already synced up with your Bates Gmail account, so that's really awesome. So you already have the access to it, and it's connected. What I thought was really cool about it is it connects with your Google profile picture. So as people are talking, the captions that are coming up for their text is next to their like picture on their face. So there's a couple of really cool features about Google Hangouts that I think club members should really utilize. And I mean, also not to mention too, there's no limit to the number of attendees for your meetings.
It's 250.
Oh,
but
there's a limit.
But I can't imagine that you would go over that.
Correct. So yes, there is a limit, but it's 250 attendees. So that's good to know for me. I didn't know that. And it's not going to cut off your event at 40 minutes
Absolutely
like
not.
Zoom would. So if you're trying to do at least an hour club meeting, Hangouts is going to be your best bet comparatively to Zoom. So
Absolutely.
think about that.
And I mean, Jen, I'm planning on hosting any virtual meetings I have with students on Google Hangouts this fall because it's so useful.
It is. It really is. Great. So now moving on to catering. If you're an experienced club member, you will know that catering and DCCE has been a really great partner with clubs in the past. However, at this time, there is not going to be catering this year for club events and meetings. So you might be familiar with like the barbecues or meal replacements and bagged lunches and things like that catering has done in the past for clubs. But at this time, that will not be happening. And just to reiterate again, we've mentioned this before, but for the first part of the semester, food is not going to be permitted at in-person clubs, events, and programs.
And specifically, the policy on food is included in the COVID-19 guidelines page, just for clarity, so you can navigate that. Now we're going to jump into a topic that is probably the most crucial because doing all this work and time and effort and planning is for naught if no one shows up or no one knows about it.
Yes.
And that's why... Jen, will you take it away with marketing?
Absolutely. So we have a variety of different ways you can market your programs and events. And the first one that we'll start off with is Bates Engage. So as you know, Bates Engage was created with you in mind as club leaders, and we want you to be able to utilize it, especially to reach first years who are a really strong user on the app right now.
Yep.
So we would like to encourage you to use it as much as possible. And the events that you create in EMS will populate automatically to Bates Engage. So they're connected.
Yep.
So whenever you reserve a space on campus, that event will show up on Bates Engage automatically. And you'll be able to edit the photo in the app to catch the attention of potential attendees. So once you create the event as a user of the app in your group, you can go in, edit that picture, and make it look super fun and exciting for potential attendees to come to the event. And you can also add virtual events to Bates Engage if you go to bates.edu/engage, and you can upload virtual events there. Since we know you're technically not reserving a space, that is how you can upload the events there so folks can see the virtual ones as well.
Yeah, and it's important to note that, as Jen said, you can go in and edit your events via Bates Engage, but we ask that if you have any specific edits to those events, you do that through EMS or you get in touch with us to edit it on our end, because if you make anything other than really a photo edit, EMS syncs into Bates Engage daily, so it would just wipe all the edits that you made on a nightly basis,
which would be unfortunate.
It would be terrible. So if you do have specific edits to like the location or the time, either edit it on the end of EMS if it's a reservable space, or get in touch with us.
Absolutely. The next way you can market your programs and events is through Bates Today. So Bates Today is the daily email that gets sent to you and all students with that day's events and programs or announcements that are happening on campus. And anyone can upload to Bates Today at any time. There are details about the requirements when you go to upload it on the form. You can find the submission form through the email that you get for Bates Today. So
and
when
we'll also pop a link in the module.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There's a couple different ways you can access it, but I think the easiest way is opening up that email that you get for Bates Today, scrolling all the way to the bottom, and you'll see a thing saying submit, and it'll walk you through how to do that. And then the next part would be digital signage. So those are the TVs that are around campus that show digital marketing. Some faculty members might use it to advertise their classes, but it's open to students as well. So you can post your event flyers there. It's just you need to note that you need a certain size of the flyer for it to fit nicely in the TV screen, and that is noted on the website as well of what those pixels are.
Yep. It's 1920 by 1080. I know that by heart now, Jen.
That's very impressive. And then another way, obviously, is social media. We know that you're all on social media. If you don't have an Instagram or a Facebook page or something for your club, I definitely advise that you make one, especially in this virtual world. It's so important to engage the folks that are not on campus or just across campus you might not see all the time through social media. We have our handle here for our Instagram. If you tag us on your posts, we will reshare your event on our page to help you advertise. So tag us as much as you want, and we will make sure to get the word out for you.
And actually, I was just talking with the marketing team the other day, and they're thinking about launching a Campus Life TikTok.
Ooh, I'm here for it.
I think that they're a little reluctant. So if you want to see a Campus Life TikTok and all the wonderful content that could come with it, email campuslifemarketing@bates.edu and let them know that you want to see it.
Oh, that's amazing. The final way that we encourage you to market your events is through paper flyers. So this is obviously more old-fashioned and not as sustainable, so you can use it sparingly. But there are a variety of shared bulletin boards around campus that you can use to hang up your flyers. There's some in the library. Commons has a huge one, Chase Hall, and some academic buildings. So keep an eye out as you're walking around campus, going to class, of areas where you can post on these boards. Something that Nick and I encourage all clubs that we meet with about marketing is that you should be doing all of these things.
Do all the things.
Do all the things because you need to reach a wide variety of students. You never know where they're going to learn about your event. So do everything. And especially for the folks that are interested in attending your events virtually, you need to make sure that you're reaching out to the folks in a virtual way as well. So all of the internet ways you can reach out, social media, Bates Today, alongside the on-campus advertising as well.
And one last thing to note, we've gotten some inquiries recently about the ad holders in Commons in the Den.
The old napkins.
Yes, the old, used to be called, formerly known as napkin holders. Those are not available right now. One, because the Den is closed, and two, because Commons doesn't really have tables. So that's not an option at this juncture. And also, as a reminder, we probably mentioned this earlier in the presentation, but all of these things can, well, maybe not Bates Today, but maybe a graphic for Bates Today can be designed by our graphic designer in-house. And we're also going to put a link to the graphic design request form in the mod for you.
Yes.
All right, so this has been a long module. Please take a breather. Take some time to sort of recenter yourself after all this information we've been throwing at you. But the bottom line here is we are here for you, and we have a variety of resources to help you in your event and program planning process. Never feel like you're an island or you're alone in this. Not only should other club members be around to help you, but we also have a variety of resources for you. First, we've said it multiple times throughout this presentation, and we're going to say it multiple times throughout the module. Bates.edu/clubs is a wonderful resource that has a variety of information, including an event and program planning guide that we'll link to in this module. Student programming advisors that I think we're still in the process of hiring at this point, but we'll hopefully have a full staff soon. Can also, they're peer-to-peer advisement on programming, so please rely on them. You can schedule an appointment with me or Jen, and also collaborate with other club leaders. Something that we see is not really used that much among club leaders are the positional listservs. So that's, for example, club presidents at groups.bates.edu, etc. You can reach out to people in your position and in other clubs and say, hey, what are you thinking? How are things going for this year? Are there things we can collaborate on? Creativity and inspiration can come out of sort of the least expected places sometimes, and sometimes the leadership listservs could be a place to start. We can't wait to see the events you come up with this year. We know it's going to be a very different year in terms of programming, but we think that as much as ever, we can make the Bates extracurricular life vibrant in partnership. Thanks all. We'll see you on the next module.
I wish they could see me. Wink.